Good evening, everyone. My name is Benjamin, and today we're talking about the Libertarian Party. This is a video I meant to have up on Tuesday, but decided to switch this all the way to the entire series to Fridays, just to give you guys more video, spread the videos out over the course of the week. I'm sorry, I'm recording this a little bit later than I wanted to. I decided to go to the range earlier today and test out my new AR. And I think somebody outside working on the building decided to fall off the ladder. That was pretty loud. I'm impressed. Anyway, so on to the Libertarian Party, and I've been getting in the comments, what the hell is the porcupine in your photo, in your pic? My logo. And the porcupine is the representative of the Libertarian Party. And the idea of the porcupine is, unlike the Democrats' jackass and the Republicans' elephant, the porcupine was chosen by the Libertarians to be our mascot. I forget exactly why the Democrats chose the Republican mascot to be an elephant. And we all know the anti-Jacksonians chose the jackass because they thought Jackson was a jackass. And they were correct, but that's beside the point. And the reason why the Libertarians chose the porcupine is because, number one, you don't want to attack these things. Look up a picture of what happens to things that attack porcupines with the intent of eating them. It's not pretty. And, but porcupines are peaceful creatures. They're herbivores, so they don't involve themselves in other critters' business. They're generally, the idea of what a libertarian should be, which is they keep to themselves. They focus on themselves and their, whatever you call a group of porcupines. A convention? I actually don't know what you call a group of porcupines. I'll look it up. But, they're just there, but they're essentially armed to the teeth, quite literally. You don't want to mess with a porcupine. But yeah, and the idea is don't tread on anyone, So, instead of talking about their demographic strengths and their demographic weaknesses, because what isn't a weakness, and do they have any demographic strengths? Maybe people who are trying to be edgy, for the most part. But, so I'm going to talk about their ideology instead. And for those of you who live across the pond, this is American libertarianism, not European libertarianism, which is more which is closer to socialism and communism. Yeah. Anyway, so in America, when you talk about a libertarian, you're talking about someone who believes in free market capitalism with a very minimal intervention. This often, and this includes anarcho-capitalists, which I'm not a part of that group. I think anarcho-capitalism is an interesting thought experiment. I'm just not sure it would actually be able to work, because what's stopping a government from coming in and taking its place? And at what point does that corporation or that mob become a government? There are certain parts of the world where there may not be an organized official government, but the local group in complete control is the government, essentially. Whether it be a crime family or just a group of armed mercenaries or whatever, they essentially are the de facto government. So it's kind of like can you ever have an actual society without a form of government? You know, if you really think about it, when you were growing up, your parents were essentially a government of sorts. You know, they made laws, they had the authority to do so, and if you didn't follow them, you got punished. Ergo, they're technically a government. But anyway, enough about that part. Most libertarians are extremely pro-gun. Yeah, I can understand why. And part of that is because libertarians really believe in some of the philosophy of John Locke, who at one point said that any government that does not protect its citizens should be removed, and he actually said that it was the moral obligation of the people to remove a government that did not protect the rights of its citizens. We're, generally speaking, extremely in favor of free expression. A true libertarian will be in favor of essentially any and all speech, so long as you're not inciting a riot or something like that. You know, or yelling fire in a crowded movie theater. Because that's a violation of one of our principal beliefs, which is, first, do no harm, then who fucking cares what you do? You know, do no harm, then do what you want. Okay? Generally, we're in favor of most civil liberties, or all of them. Actually, that would be an accurate description. We're in favor of all civil liberties. The reason why I included most is some people believe that there should be certain limits on certain types of behavior. For example, some hard drugs, specifically the ones that have proven links to violent, erratic behavior. Some libertarians aren't for prostitution, that type of thing. It just depends. Me personally, I agree with that drug argument. If there's no proven link to violent or erratic behavior that does endanger other people, I don't see a reason why you shouldn't let people use them, even if they are going to abuse it. Because it's not the government's business to manage that. And even though I disagree with it, you know, I don't think that there's any reason why the government should stop a person from selling what they have available, even selling their body for unspeakable things. You know, so long as, you know, they're getting paid, of course. And generally speaking, libertarians are not fans of the government. To the point where it can often border on breeding conspiracy theories. I think a prime example of that type of anti-government level thought and how deep it can actually get for certain libertarians would be Dale Gribble from King of the Hill. Or think of some other extremely anti-government people. Well, anyway, I'll kind of move on. I'll name a few prominent libertarians in a bit. Well, actually, I'll do that right now, because there are a lot of famous libertarians in America, and there are also some famous ones in television as well. So, obviously, prominent libertarians would include Ron Paul. To a degree, his son Rand Paul, though Rand kind of has to play the social conservative card a little bit, mostly because he has to get elected in Kentucky. Also in real life, there's Drew Carey. both Penn Jillette and Teller, I forget what his other, but both Penn and Teller are libertarians. There's, of course, we can't really talk about libertarianism without talking about Gary Johnson. What is Aleppo? Anyway, some other prominent ones, trying to think off the top of my head. I mean, if we're going to talk politicians, you can include Austin Peterson. Both of the Koch brothers, actually. And, yeah. In television, obviously, I'm going to include Dale Gribble from King of the Hill, because, duh. You've got Ron Swanson from Parks and Recreation. Those are two notable ones, I would agree, that I can remember off the top of my head. My brain is kind of right now. I'm kind of blanking, but you can look it up and you'll find a surprising amount of people who are American-style libertarians, who are pretty prominent. Oh, yeah, I forgot. John McAfee, the guy who did McAfee internet, or, antivirus stuff. Yeah. He was even, he even ran for president in 2016 as a libertarian. He didn't win the primary, obviously. So, a little bit of history for the party. They were officially formed in 1972, and actually that year their vice presidential candidate got an electoral vote. And she became the first woman to get an electoral vote in U.S. history. In the 80s, I believe it was David Koch was the presidential nominee one year, and Ron Paul was the presidential nominee in 88. But even though they were formed in 1972, they have roots in the anti-federalist / Democrat Republicans and the Enlightenment. The Enlightenment, mostly from the philosophies built around the writings of John Locke, Adam Smith, and Voltaire, as well as classical liberalism. They did have some brief, and that's still ongoing. A lot of libertarians have this weird obsession with Ayn Rand. I've read Ayn Rand. I would not recommend it in the slightest unless you want, I wouldn't recommend reading any of Ayn Rand's works. Though if you want to read a condensed version of, a condensed and altered version of Anthem, listen to Rush's song 2112, which was inspired by, to a degree, it was inspired by the book Anthem. And in the notes of the album, in the lyrical notes, Neil Peart, the lyricist and drummer for the band Rush, gave credit to Ayn Rand just because he didn't want to get charged with plagiarism or whatever. But objectivism is this kind of philosophy that unfortunately gives libertarians kind of a bad name, because it really is that, screw you, I got mine, you're on your own, buddy. That's not what libertarianism is about. Libertarianism, while there is an element of self-sufficiency and you need to, do good by yourself first, that doesn't mean there isn't a place for, helping others out in charity and altruism. As a matter of fact, that's that's one of the reasons why the philosophy should work, is because people will take over, welfare and taking, protecting, the poor. It's volunteering. It's doing it as an individual rather than saying, oh, you take my taxes and you distribute them. It's saying, okay, well, I'm going to give to charity voluntarily. I'm going to volunteer for charities. I'm going to volunteer with my fire department, my police department. I'll build the road if absolutely necessary. That type of thing. So objectivism and this obsession with Ayn Rand really does give libertarianism a bad name here in the States. And more recently, libertarians have realized that either they have to run within the Republican Party because they're more open to free market ideas and firearms than the Democrats ever will be or ever have been. Or caucusing with the GOP, which essentially means that if a libertarian gets in as, say, an independent, they'll vote with the Republican Party, simply because most of the time the Republicans are going to align with their issues, though they will vote with Democrats in the event the Democrats align with them on that particular issue. For example, they vote with the Republicans on most economic issues, most firearms-related issues, but they vote with the Democrats on LGBT rights, immigration policy, generally speaking, cuts to military spending to a degree. Most libertarians would prefer the military be more efficient than with money, rather than just throw money at the problem and see if that helps. So their political strengths are they can easily market themselves as a moderate party that is between the GOP and the Democrats. They could say, well, we're the best of both worlds. We've got your Republican positions that you guys seem to like, because most people, by about not by much, but generally speaking, people trust a Republican more on the economy than the Democrat. But when it comes to a lot of social issues, they trust the Democrats more than a Republican. So they can say, well, we've got those Republican policies you like, but we've also got those Democrat policies that you like. So they can appeal to both constituencies, and they can advertise themselves as a new take on American ideals that hasn't been corrupted by being in power, and at least legitimately isn't about holding on to power. Because let's be honest, that's what both major parties' shtick is they're going to do whatever it takes to remain in power. So their political weaknesses, they're a third party. There's no beating around the bush with this. They're a third party that's very minor. And so they won't have a lot of power. It'd be very difficult if, say, a handful of libertarians got into Congress, from some very bold state or some very high state like Colorado. But let's say it happens. Well, they're not going to get onto a lot of committees in Congress, and they're not going to have a chance at any leadership positions, because guess what? They won't have a majority. So they won't be the president pro tempore of the Senate. They won't be the Speaker of the House or any of the other officers in Congress. So, and even then, getting into power is even harder, because getting into Congress or the presidency, it's even more difficult, because guess what? You have to deal with well, if I vote for you, you're a third party, I'm just throwing my vote away. again, I'm bringing up the obsession with Ayn Rand because that is a big problem. A lot of libertarians are seen as kooky and weird and maybe a bit too much into that whole prepper conspiracy theory area, which is honestly kind of fair in some regards. And here's actually something that's really weird, is there is extreme infighting within the Libertarian Party here in the United States. Because you have the ANCAPs, who want to completely abolish government and institute pure free markets and all that, and then you have the classical liberals, you have the minarchists, you have the paleo-conservatives, though they're more Tea Partiers, you have some Tea Partiers, and the thing is, none of them want to compromise with each other, because libertarians, by their nature, are extreme purists. When I say purists, they really are purists. How libertarians can improve as a party and become the best libertarian party they can be? Well, they need to, without losing too much of their base, which is kind of hard to figure out who their base is in a lot of ways. They need to appeal to moderates who generally want more Democrat-backed social policies with GOP stewardship of the economy. So essentially, appeal to moderates and independents, as well as young people who, especially within the Republican Party, essentially already agree with most policies libertarians want to put in place. They need to appeal to younger Republicans as well as blue dog Democrats, your conservative Democrats. They need to present themselves as a legitimate choice and not just, quote, throwing your vote away. And the easiest way to do this is if they run into, I'm going to just have a hypothetical conversation here. Well, I would vote Libertarian, but that's just throwing my vote away. So I'm just going to vote for the lesser of two evils. That is throwing your vote away. Voting for the lesser of two evils is inherently throwing your vote away because you're not voting for what you believe in. You clearly believe in libertarian principles. Why not vote for what you believe in and vote libertarian? So what if the other party wins? Because they're not voting for their principles either. But if you are voting for your principles, you're going to send a message to whichever major party you align with, mostly. You're going to send a message to them saying, you're not representing my ideals, change them, or you've lost my vote, and we'll replace you with a party that does represent my ideals. The other thing they need to do is build a bench at the local and state level so people are inclined to vote for them at higher levels of government. They need to build from the bottom up rather than from the top down, which I've noticed they've been banking on good presidential level turnout rather than building from, say, a local city level or state level position. And here's how they can win elections in the future. They need to convince voters who are inclined to vote Libertarian that voting for the lesser of two evils is throwing your vote away, and to vote for what you believe in, which, I kind of stated that already, but I just think that needs to be emphasized. They need to stop the obsession with Ayn Rand. I called it a fetish, and it kind of is, but they need to stop obsessing over Ayn Rand and saying, oh, Ayn Rand is the greatest, and pushing Atlas Shrugged and Anthem and Fountainhead on people. You need to get normal people to run as libertarians, not potheads, not Austin Peterson, not what is Aleppo, and not essentially don't run the people you have been running. Focus on the local and the state level instead of the national level. Don't stop running presidential candidates, but don't focus so much on their runs. Focus at the lower levels. How to continue to lose elections. Make zero effort to develop a bench. Run lunatics and weirdos and potheads and assholes. Don't market themselves in a positive manner. Be confrontational, which is actually a problem a lot of libertarians have. Go too hardcore libertarian, aka going the ANCAP route, the anarcho-capitalist route. Anyway, guys, I want to thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I'll see you guys next time. Take it easy. Bye.